Hello, students. Welcome to KENE'S Educare, a group of KENE solutions. This is part 1 of lesson number 6, tissue. Okay, so अगर आपको याद है in the last class we have studied about the fundamental unit of life. What was the last lesson all about? It was all about the cell. तो आपने वहाँ पे क्या पढ़ा है in that lesson? We have discussed on different kinds of cells that exist in our body with so many different activities which came all together, right? So हमने देखा वहाँ पे that we have different kinds of cells and we have something or the other thing that is protecting ourselves, that is doing the function that the cell has to do. So we have discussed on the different cell organelles which are present inside the cell, and those cell organelles, they are helping the cell in carrying out the function that has been required by them, right? अब जैसे कि we have discussed on Golgi apparatus, we have discussed on lysosomes, we have discussed on cell membrane, which is also called as a plasma membrane. You know what exactly a cell wall is, you know what a plastid is, what a vacuole is, what mitochondria is, what is nuclear membrane, what are plant cells and animal cells, what are prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cell. So the last lesson has given you a brief introduction all about cell. So you are aware of cell, and if you remember, I have told you in the last class itself that हमारा जो body है, I'll give you that level of organization again. Our human body is made up of cells. Okay, so when this group of cells they come together, they make up the tissue. तो tissues किससे बन रहे हैं? These tissues they are made from cells only, and when this group of tissues come together, they make the organ in our body. And once we have these different organs which are formed, they form an organ system so that they can perform different kind of like you can say functions within our body. जैसे we need an organ system for carrying out the respiratory system in our body. Respiratory system के लिए it is not like that कि सिर्फ एक organ lung is only responsible for respiration, right? We have several different organs as well which are involved in respiration. Then circulation में it is not like that only heart is responsible, right, for circulation. We have different organs which are coming together and they are working together so that they can function efficiently. So this is how when 3-4 organs come together and they start doing some kind of function, they perform some function for our body, then we say that the organ system has been formed. And once we have this organ system, it means now a multicellular organism is ready for its survival. And this multicellular organism is none other than we human beings, and this is how we are made. ओके, तो हमारी बॉडी का जो सबसे छोटा पार्ट है वो क्या है? सेल्स. जब सेल्स एक साथ ग्रुप फॉर्म करते हैं सो दे मेक द टिश्यू. टिश्यूज एक साथ ग्रुप में आएंगे व्हेन सेवरल टिश्यूज कम टुगेदर दे फॉर्म द ऑर्गन. ऑर्गन एक साथ आके क्या फॉर्म करेंगे? ऑर्गन सिस्टम. एंड ऑर्गन सिस्टम है इसका मतलब मल्टी सेलुलर ऑर्गेनिजम्स are going to function, and this is how human being has been made. Okay, ना आपको पता है जैसे अभी हमने सेल के इतने सारे टाइप्स देखे. वी ऑल नो हमारे बॉडी में अलग अलग टाइप के सेल्स हैं in different parts of the body which are performing different kinds of function. We have blood cell, we have fat cell, we have nervous cell, right? We have brain cell. We have different types of cells that we have studied in the last lesson. And if you see, the last lesson and this lesson are somewhat related to each other. So in this lesson now you should know that we have two different types of tissue. कितने types के tissue होते हैं हमारे पास? One we have is plant tissue, and secondly we have an animal tissue. Okay, so these are the two different types of tissues that we have. And if I tell about plant tissue, दिस इज द बेसिक थिंग जो आपको पता होनी चाहिए. दैट इज व्हाई आई एम इंट्रोड्यूसिंग दिस इन दिस फर्स्ट पार्ट इटसेल्फ. ओके, सो जो हमारा प्लांट टिश्यू है दैट इज ऑफ टू टाइप्स. कितने टाइप्स का है? टू टाइप्स का. फर्स्ट टाइप इज मेरिस्टेमेटिक टिश्यू. ओके, पहले टाइप का टिश्यू कौन सा है? मेरिस्टेमेटिक टिश्यू. And the second type of tissue that we have is called as permanent tissue. So these are the two different types of plant tissue that we have. अभी ये जो मेरिस्टेमेटिक टिश्यू है वो exactly क्या होता है? See, it consists of actively dividing cell. ये मेरिस्टेमेटिक टिश्यू जो है it consists of actively dividing cell. And if I go in detail telling you about the meristematic tissue, I'll write here that this meristematic tissue it is of three types. कितने types का होगा? Three types का. First we have is apical meristem. ठीक है, फर्स्ट टाइप ऑफ मेरिस्टेमेटिक टिश्यू कौन सा है? एपिकल मेरिस्टेम. नाउ दिस एपिकल मेरिस्टेम, एपिकल मतलब टॉप. ओके, सो एपिकल मेरिस्टेम इज प्रेजेंट एट द growing tip of the stem as well as root, and this is going to help in increasing the length of the stem and root. Okay, तो एपिकल मेरिस्टेम कहाँ पे प्रेजेंट होगा? एट दी, you can say that it is present at the growing tip of the stems and root. I'll write at the growing tip of the stem and root. And they help in increasing the length of the stem and the root. Okay, then the second type of meristematic tissue that we have, I'll write it here. एक हो गया एपिकल मेरिस्टेमेटिक टिश्यू, दूसरा है इंटर कैलरी मेरिस्टेम. क्या? इंटर कैलरी मेरिस्टेम. दिस इज द सेकेंड टाइप ऑफ द meristematic tissue that we have, intercalary meristem. Now apical meristem मतलब वो top tip पे present था stem and root के, but this intercalary meristem that is present at the base of the leaf. Where it is present? Base of leaves पे. And this intercalary meristem is going to help in longitudinal growth of the plant. ठीक है, लॉन्जिट्यूडनली भी तो प्लांट को ग्रो करना होता है. सो फॉर दैट लॉन्जिट्यूडनल ग्रोथ ऑफ द प्लांट दिस इंटरकैलरी मेरिस्टेम प्लेज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल. ओके, एंड द थर्ड टाइप ऑफ द मेरिस्टेमेटिक टिश्यू दैट वी हैव इज द लैटरल मेरिस्टेम. ठीक है, थर्ड टाइप का टिश्यू कौन सा है? वी हैव दिस लैटरल मेरिस्टेम, एंड दिस लैटरल मेरिस्टेम इज प्रेजेंट एट द लैटरल साइड. Okay, present on the lateral side lateral meristem कहाँ पे present है? It is present on the lateral side of the stem and root. And remember lateral meristem जो है that is going to help us in increasing the length of the stem and the root. So plant tissue दो टाइप का होता है, एक होता है meristematic tissue, एक होता है permanent tissue. Now meristematic tissue it consists of actively dividing cell. So whatever kind of tissue like cells are present here in meristematic tissue, because a group of cell when it comes together that makes up the tissue, right? So all the dividing cells, actively dividing cell will be present under this meristematic tissue. And now we can further divide this meristematic tissue into three types. So we have apical meristem, intercalary meristem and lateral meristem, where apical meristem जो है that is present at the growing tip of the stem and the root. Apical means top, So it is going to be present at the growing tip, and apical meristem is going to help in increasing the length of the stem and the root. Now, to increase the length of stem as well as of the root, we need this apical meristem, which should be present at the growing tip. Okay, then the second type of meristematic tissue that we have is intercalary meristem. Now this intercalary meristem is present at the base of the leaves. एक हो गया growing tip पे. Now this intercalary meristem is present at the base of the leaves, and we require this intercalary meristem फॉर लॉन्जिट्यूडनल ग्रोथ ऑफ द प्लांट. तो प्लांट्स को लॉन्जिट्यूडनली ग्रो करने के लिए हमें क्या चाहिए? वी नीड दिस इंटर कैलरी मेरिस्टेम ऑल टुगेदर. Okay, and the last type of meristematic tissue that we have is lateral meristem. Now the name itself suggests that this lateral meristem, it is present at the lateral side of the stem and the root. कहाँ पे present होगा? Lateral side of the stem and the root, and here lateral meristem is going to help us in increasing the length of the stem and the root. Okay, so I hope you are clear with this first type of plant tissue that we have, that is called as the meristematic tissue. Now the second type of tissue that we have is permanent tissue, right? So I'll just clear everything. I hope that you have taken a note of this meristematic tissue, how it is further divided into two, and one more thing I'll write. The definition of tissue. तो टिश्यू दो टाइप के हैं, प्लांट टिश्यू का दो टाइप है, मेरिस्टेमेटिक एंड परमानेंट. सो वी आर डन विद द मेरिस्टेमेटिक टिश्यू. आई एम गिविंग यू वन मोर मिनट so that whatever you need to write, you can write it, because I'm going to clear the screen. And next I'm going to start with the permanent tissue. So permanent tissue is also further divided, so we'll see that. Now whatever is written on the screen is very important, please take it. Okay, now see, what is permanent tissue? Actually you should know that first. मेरिस्टेमेटिक टिश्यू आपको पता चल गया कि वहाँ पे सारे एक्टिवली डिवाइडिंग सेल्स प्रेजेंट होंगे. अब परमानेंट टिश्यू देखो. सी, permanent tissue is formed from the meristematic tissue itself. Okay, so I'll write it is formed from the meristematic tissue what happens here. परमानेंट टिश्यू जो है ना, वो मेरिस्टेमेटिक टिश्यू से ही फॉर्म होगा, एंड जो भी सेल्स होते हैं इस टिश्यू के अंदर, ओके, बिकॉज द टिश्यू इज इटसेल्फ मेड अप ऑफ सेल्स, राइट. सो सेल्स जो होंगे इस टिश्यू के अंदर, दे आर गोइंग टू लूज देयर एबिलिटी टू डिवाइड. सो नाउ दे आर नॉट बीइंग एबल टू डिवाइड देमसेल्फ. एंड परमानेंट टिश्यू किससे बनता है? They are formed from the meristematic tissue itself. Now we can further divide this permanent tissue into, first type that we have is parenchyma. I hope आपने ये पहले सुना है, parenchyma, collenchyma. Okay, so it is divided into parenchyma. Then we have collenchyma. After that we have sclerenchyma. Okay, and the second type that we have of permanent tissue is complex permanent tissue. क्या है? We have complex permanent tissue. So I'll let you know about this complex permanent tissue after we discuss on parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma. ओके, सो देखो परमानेंट टिश्यू क्या है, हमें कहाँ से मिला है परमानेंट टिश्यू. We have got this permanent tissue from the meristematic tissue itself, and whatever cells are present in this tissue, permanent tissue, they are going to lose their ability to divide. And as I told you that we can divide this permanent tissue into three types: parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma, right? So let's see what exactly parenchyma is. So parenchyma जो है, it is formed from meristematic. You can write that it is composed of. Okay, parenchyma क्या है? It is composed of unspecialized living cell. क्या होगा इनके पास? Unspecialized living cell with relatively thin cell wall. So the cell wall which is present in this parenchyma is going to be thin, and there will be unspecialized living cells which are going to be present here. As well as with this thin cell wall, the space which is present, there is an intracellular space which is present within them. So it is having this intracellular space. Okay, and they are present in soft parts of the plant. Where is this parenchyma present? Present in soft part of the plant. Okay, so this is what you should know about the parenchyma. That parenchyma किससे बना है? Unspecialized living cell से. अब वो unspecialized living cell का अगर आप cell wall देखोगे, you are very much aware of what cell wall exactly is, because हमने last lesson में we have discussed about the cell wall, right? So ये जो parenchyma है वो किससे बना है? Unspecialized living cell से, जिसका cell wall जो है वो बहुत ज़्यादा thin है. It is having an intracellular space which is present in between. And parenchyma कहाँ पे present होगा? It is always present in the soft part of the plant. Okay. Now the second type that we have is collenchyma. क्या है second? We have collenchyma to discuss in detail, and then we have sclerenchyma. So what exactly collenchyma is? See, collenchyma, I'll write it here. So collenchyma is composed of living and elongated cell with relatively thin cell wall. not relatively thin. Relatively thin is parenchyma. Okay, so collenchyma is going to have living and elongated cell who are going to have an irregular. The cell wall is irregularly thickened at the corner. Okay, what you'll write? Cell wall is irregularly thickened at the corner, and there is no intracellular space. And this collenchyma is going to help in bending of leaves and stems. So collenchyma helps in bending of leaves and so collenchyma किससे बना हुआ है? Collenchyma जो है that is composed of living cell, and that cell is going to be an elongated cell. And अब ये cell wall है, we all know that cell has a cell wall, right? So cell wall जो होगा collenchyma का, that is going to be irregularly thickened at the corner. There will be no intracellular space which will be present there. And this collenchyma, it helps in bending the leaves and the stems. कहाँ help करेंगे? Bending the leaves and the stems. Okay, so please write it about the parenchyma and the collenchyma. Now the next thing that we are going to discuss is about the sclerenchyma and the uh, complex permanent tissue. Okay, okay. So after this parenchyma, collenchyma, the third thing that we have is the sclerenchyma. So you can write about sclerenchyma is sclerenchyma is going to, like, it is a long narrow thick walled cell. What it is? Sclerenchyma is composed of long narrow thick walled cell. ठीक है, तो अभी तक आपने देखा दैट पैरेन्काइमा एंड कोलेनकाइमा में the cell wall was thin, but here in sclerenchyma we have a thick walled cell. So the cell wall here is going to be thick, and sclerenchyma is made up of dead cells, and there will be no intracellular cells. Okay, so you'll write it is made up of dead cells, and there is no intracellular space. Okay, so these are the three different types of permanent tissue that we have. Along with this, we have one more that is called as the complex permanent tissue. Now remember, जो complex permanent tissue होता है ना, it is made up of more than one type of cell. within one type of cells. Then we call this type of like complex permanent tissue. कैसे बनता है? Why it is complex? Because वो एक से ज़्यादा सेल से बना हुआ है, and that is the reason we call that type of permanent tissue as complex permanent tissue. Okay. So I hope that you are clear with this plant tissue. तो plant tissue में हमने क्या देखा? We have two different types of plant tissue. एक होता है meristematic tissue, एक होता है permanent tissue. Meristematic tissue जो है, what does like meristematic tissue के पास क्या होता है? It has actively dividing cell. Okay, and meristematic tissue हमारे पास three types के हैं. What are they? Apical meristem, which are present at the growing tip of the roots and the stems, and as this apical meristem is present at the tip of this growing roots and stems, it is going to help in increasing the length of the stem and the roots. Okay, then the second type of meristematic tissue that we have is intercalary meristem. अब ये intercalary meristem कहाँ पे present होता है? वो present होता है बेस पे. तो एक टाइप का मेरिस्टम प्रेजेंट है टॉप पे, एक प्रेजेंट है बेस पे, और एक प्रेजेंट है लैटरल साइड पे. So the one which is present at the base of the leaf is called as an intercalary meristem, and this intercalary meristem is required for the longitudinal growth of the plant. Plants को longitudinally grow करवाने के लिए we need this intercalary meristem. Okay, and lastly we have this lateral meristem. तो ये lateral meristem कहाँ पे present होगा? It is going to be present on the lateral side of the stems and the roots. Okay, and since they are present on the lateral side, it is going to help in increasing the length of the stem and the root. Okay, so this is what we have discussed on the meristematic tissue. फिर आता है permanent tissue. Permanent tissue कहाँ से form होता है? Permanent tissue is formed from the meristematic tissue itself. तो जो भी cells होते हैं इस permanent tissue में, they are going to lose their ability to divide, and we have three different types of this permanent tissue. That is, we have a parenchyma, we have collenchyma, and we have sclerenchyma. So these are three different types of permanent tissue that we have. Parenchyma जो है, parenchyma is composed of unspecialized living cell. किससे composed है? Unspecialized living cell, and as they are unspecialized, उनका जो cell wall होगा वो बहुत ज़्यादा thin होगा. There will be an intracellular space which will be present, and ये जो parenchyma है वो कहाँ पे present होता है? They are always present in the soft part of the plant. Okay, then we discussed on collenchyma. अब collenchyma के पास क्या होता है? Living और elongated cells होते हैं, and इनका जो cell wall होता है that is regularly thickened at the corner. Cell wall thick तो होगा पर irregularly आप देखोगे कि कोई कोई कॉर्नर पे ये थिक है, कोई कॉर्नर पे ये थिन है. ओके, एंड योर इन collenchyma, जैसे हमने parenchyma में देखा that there was an intracellular space which was available, but collenchyma के अंदर there is no intracellular space. Okay, so collenchyma is going to help in bending of the leaves and the stems. And lastly we have this sclerenchyma. अब sclerenchyma किससे बना हुआ है? It is composed of long narrow thick walled. कैसा है ये? thick walled cell, and sclerenchyma is made up of dead cells. किससे बना है sclerenchyma? dead cell से बना हुआ है, and there is no intracellular space which is present there. Okay, क्या नहीं है? There is no intracellular space which is present there. Okay, so this was all about the plant tissue that I have given you the information on. I hope you have taken a note of it. I'll wait for 1 minute. If anyone has not taken, you can take a screenshot, or either you can write it in your notebook. Because next thing that we have is the animal cell with us. Okay. So I'll just clear it, whatever is there on the screen. Wait. So this is all about the plant tissue that we have discussed. Now we have the animal tissue to discuss. Okay. Animal tissue. So see, एनिमल टिश्यू को हम डिवाइड कर सकते हैं 4 टाइप्स में. कितने? 4 टाइप्स में. एंड दे आर डिवाइडेड ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ फंक्शन दैट दे आर परफॉर्मिंग. Okay, so I'll write that it is divided into 4 types based on the function they perform. Okay, so the first, I'll write the 4 types and then we will just see that them in detail. Okay, so first type that we have is epithelial tissue. पहला कौन सा है? We have epithelial tissue is the first type of the animal tissue. After epithelial tissue we have connective tissue. कौन सा? Connective tissue. ठीक है, this is the second type of the animal tissue that we have. Then the third type में we have muscular tissue. And the fourth type of animal tissue that we have is called as the nervous tissue. Okay, so these are the 4 important type of tissues that we are having. Now one by one we are going to discuss on all the 4 different types. So let us first discuss on the epithelial tissue. Now what do you think epithelial tissue कहाँ पे होगा? हमारे स्किन के ऊपर, right? Wait. So we were on epithelial tissue, right? So epithelial tissue, you can write that they form because they are present on our skin, right? So you'll write this epithelial tissue, they form the covering of external surface. Covering of external surface internal cavities and organs of animal body. Okay, so epithelial tissue क्या बनाता है? It forms the covering, and ये covering किसकी होती है? External surface की. Okay, then along with this external surface की covering, it has like they form the internal cavities as well as organ of the animal body. And we have 3 different types of epithelial tissue. Now which are the 3 different types of epithelial tissue that we have? So we have simple squamous epithelium. क्या है हमारे पास? Simple squamous epithelium. Then secondly we have cuboidal epithelium. ठीक है, cuboidal epithelium. And the third type of epithelial tissue that we have, we call that as columnar epithelium. ठीक है, so these are the 3 different types of epithelium that we have. एपिथेलियम क्या होता है? एपिथेलियल टिश्यू इज प्रेजेंट इन आवर स्किन. तो इट इज फॉर्मिंग आवर एक्सटर्नल surface. It is forming the internal cavities as well as it is forming the organs of the animal body. Animal body के जो भी organs होते हैं वो कौन form करता है? It is being formed by the epithelial tissue itself, and we have three different types of epithelial tissue. What are they? We have simple squamous epithelium, then we have cuboidal epithelium. After that, we have this columnar epithelium. So, these are the three most important types of epithelial tissues that we are having. Okay. I hope that you're taking a note because these all things are important things. That is the reason I'm specifically taking one part just to explain you about the animal tissue and the plant tissue. Okay. Now see, the second type of tissue that we have, that is called as the connective tissue. So I'll write here about the connective tissue. Okay. So connective tissue जो है वो क्या करते हैं? They connect the various organs of the body. So you'll write they connect various organs of the body. Okay. And here we can divide this connective tissue into, like, we have areolar tissue, then we have adipose tissue, after that we have dense regular connective tissue, and the fourth type that we have is called as the skeletal tissue. Okay, so these are the three types of connective tissue that we are having, which connect the various organs of our body. After that, the next type of tissue that we have is called as animal tissue that we have is called as the muscular tissue. Muscular tissue, the name itself is suggesting what it does. So muscular tissue is going to provide the movement of the body. Okay, so I'll write they provide the movement of the body. Okay, and we can divide this like into three types. कितने? तीन types में हम इसको divide कर सकते हैं. The first type of muscular tissue that we have is striated. अब striated muscular tissue बोल सकते हैं, या तो we can also call it as skeletal, or we can even call it as voluntary muscle. Okay. Then second type of muscular tissue that we have is smooth or involuntary muscle. Smooth or involuntary muscle. Okay. And the third type that we have is called the cardiac muscle. So these are the three different types of muscular tissue that we have. And the last type of animal tissue that we have is called the nervous tissue. क्या है? Nervous tissue. So अब nervous tissue जो है, they are present in brain. I'll write this are present in brain. spinal cord, and nerves. ओके एंड न्यूरॉन्स क्या होते हैं? न्यूरॉन्स, आई होप यू आर अवेयर ऑफ न्यूरॉन्स. सो न्यूरॉन्स आर cells of nervous tissue which consist of axon, cell body and dendrite. Axon, cell body and dendrites. Okay, so here we complete with the animal tissue as well. अब animal tissue में हमने क्या देखा? That based on the function that they are performing, we have four different types of animal tissue. That is epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue and nervous tissue. But when we discuss in detail, you will come to know many more things about this. बिकॉज हमने देखा कि अभी एपिथेलियल टिश्यू जो फर्दर डिवाइडेड है इनटू थ्री टाइप्स, देन कनेक्टिव टिश्यू फर्दर डिवाइडेड इनटू फोर टाइप्स. तो आई हैव गिवन यू जस्ट अ बेसिक, यू कैन से बेसिक नॉलेज. बिकॉज अगर आप डिटेल में स्टडी करोगे तो आपको यहाँ पे सारे डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ एपिथेलियल टिश्यू पे भी स्टडी करना पड़ेगा. You should know what a simple squamous epithelium is. You should know what a cuboidal epithelium is, and you should know what a columnar epithelium is. So when you do a detailed study, आपको सारे different types of epithelial tissue, डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ कनेक्टिव टिश्यू, सारी चीज़ें स्टडी करनी पड़ेगी. ओके, एपिथेलियल टिश्यू क्या फॉर्म कर रहा है? एपिथेलियल टिश्यू इज फॉर्मिंग द कवरिंग ऑफ द एक्सटर्नल सरफेस. हमारे बॉडी का जो एक्सटर्नल सरफेस है उसकी कवरिंग कौन फॉर्म करता है? दैट इज बीन फॉर्म बाय द एपिथेलियल टिश्यू. द इंटरनल कैविटीज दैट आवर बॉडी इज हैविंग, हु इज फॉर्मिंग दैट इंटरनल कैविटी? दैट इज ऑल्सो बीन फॉर्म बाय द epithelial tissue. And the organs of the animal body, that is also being formed by the epithelial tissue. Okay, then we have this connective tissue. अब connective tissue क्या करता है? Connective tissue is going to connect all the organs of the body. We have different various organs which are present inside our body, right? So this connective tissue are going to connect all these different organs, and we have four different types of connective tissue which are present. कौन से हैं वो? We have areolar tissue. We are not discussing them in detail now. I've just given you the different types of connective tissue. So we have areolar tissue, we have adipose tissue, we have dense regular connective tissue, and lastly we have this skeletal tissue. So these are the four different kinds of connective tissue that we have. Okay, so I hope you are clear with this first two types, that is epithelial tissue जिसके three different types हैं, and connective tissue जिसके four different types हैं. Now it is very much important that at least you know this much things about the tissue, because we are discussing on tissues, and अपने in your earlier classes you might have discussed about all these things, and since you are you are going to prepare for your exams further, तो ये सारी चीज़ें you should know from now itself. Okay, then the third type of tissue that we have is the muscular tissue. So muscular tissue कहाँ help करता है किसी भी you can say किसी भी ऑर्गेनिज्म या एनिमल बॉडी को, सिंस इट इज़ एन एनिमल टिश्यू राइट, सो ये एनिमल के अंदर ही प्रेजेंट होगा राइट. सो मस्कुलर टिश्यू क्या किस लिए हेल्प करता है एनिमल को? इट प्रोवाइड्स द मूवमेंट ऑफ द बॉडी टू द एनिमल. सो मस्कुलर टिश्यू के वी हैव थ्री डिफरेंट टाइप्स. वी हैव स्ट्राइटेड which is also called as skeletal muscle, or we can even call it as voluntary muscle. Okay, then the second type of muscular tissue that we have is called as smooth muscle, or we can even call this as involuntary muscle. Okay, and the third type that we have is cardiac muscle. So these are the three different types of muscular tissue which is helping the animal in moving their body, in movement of their body. Okay, and lastly we have this nervous tissue. अब nervous tissue कहाँ पे present होता है? This nervous tissue is present inside our brain, inside our spinal cord and the nerves, and all these three things, all these three You can say they function as a very important organ in our body. Brain is very much important for us. Spinal cord and nerves are also very much important to us, right? So they perform some important functions in our body. And we have certain neurons. Now neurons जो है, they are the cell of the nervous tissue. Neurons क्या है? Neurons are the cells of the nervous tissue, जिनके पास क्या होता है ना, when you see the structure of the neuron, you will see that the body is divided into three parts. They have an axon, they have a cell body, and they have dendrites. So when it comes to neurons, it means we are discussing on the nervous system. Nervous system पे discuss करोगे तो nervous tissue indirectly आएगा ही. Now one more thing, how is the tissue made up of? सारे tissues कैसे बनते हैं? When a group of cell come together, that makes up the tissue, right? So now let's see what exactly we are going to discuss in this lesson. Okay, so first of all, they have given you a basic information and the structure of the tissue itself. Wait, ये क्या है? This is the structure of the tissue which has been given. So tissue is a group of cell, and this group of cell who are coming together and forming this tissue, it should have similar structure and function. क्या होना चाहिए उनके पास? They should have the similar structure and the function. Okay, तो ऐसा नहीं है कि different types of cells are coming together and they are making up one tissue. No, the tissue which are coming together, they should be of similar structure. They should be having the similar structure, as well as they should be performing the same function, and then only they can form a particular type of tissue. Okay, then in plants and animals, group of animals called tissue, they carry out the specific function. When it comes to plants and animals, we have so many different functions to carry on, so many different activities that our body is carrying on, right? So who is helping this animal body and the plant body to carry out this important specific function? So that is being done with the help of the tissues which are present in our body. Okay, now यहाँ पे अभी एग्जाम्पल क्या दिया है? In human beings, the cell of muscular tissue, it contract and relax, and this muscular tissue, it only helps us in the movement. Okay, तो human beings के अंदर हमारे पास क्या है? हमारे पास मस्क्यूलर टिश्यू है, एंड बिकॉज दिस मस्क्यूलर टिश्यू इट इज़ कंट्रैक्टिंग एंड रिलैक्सिंग. अगर मसल्स का कंट्रैक्शन नहीं होगा तो हमारे बॉडी में मूवमेंट नहीं हो पाएगी. वाई आर बॉडी इज एबल टू मूव, वाई आर हैंड्स आर एबल टू मूव फ्रॉम योर एंड देयर? यू कैन मूव योर हैंड इन 360, राइट? 360 रोटेशन कर सकते हो, आप अपने लेग्स का मूवमेंट कर सकते हो, आप बॉडी का मूवमेंट कर सकते हो. हाउ इज दिस मूवमेंट्स पॉसिबल? हाउ आर दिस मूवमेंट्स पॉसिबल? It is all because of the muscular tissue which is present, and this muscular tissue, it keeps on contracting and relaxing. Okay, so in plants, the cell of the vascular tissue, it conduct water and food from one part of the plant to the other. Now vascular tissues, if you remember or if you know about this vascular tissues में क्या होता है? So we have two different types of vascular tissue. एक होता है xylem, that is E. Okay, एक होता है xylem and एक होता है phloem. So xylem and phloem, this both are the vascular tissue which are present in water, which are present in the plant cell. Okay, so water कौन conduct करता है? Xylem is responsible for conducting water to different parts of the plant, and phloem is responsible for conducting food to डिफरेंट पार्ट्स ऑफ द प्लांट्स, लाइक एक पार्ट ऑफ द प्लांट से दूसरे पार्ट ऑफ द प्लांट तक जो वाटर एंड न्यूट्रिएंट which will get passed, it has been done with the help of the vascular tissues which are present in the plant cell. And we have two different types of vascular tissue which are present. Okay, what do we have? We have two different types of vascular tissue. We have a xylem and we have a phloem. Xylem is responsible for conducting the water to the plant cell or from one part of the plant to the other part, and phloem is responsible for conducting the food from one part of the plant to the other part. Okay, and what is tissue? Tissue क्या होता है? Tissue is a group of cell. क्या है tissue? Tissue is a group of cell who is which is having, the cells should have similar structure as well as similar functions to perform. Okay, then we have these questions to discuss on. So we will start with this, like, are the plants and the animal cells, they are made up of same type of tissue or not? Now this is one of the question, like, since we are discussing on the basic things, we will start with the exact lesson in the next part itself, but we will just see here. Now the structure, I hope that you know कि ये microscopic structure है, how the plant tissue looks like under the microscope and how the animal tissues look like. So if you can see that there is a noticeable difference which exists between a plant tissue and animal tissue, right? बहुत ज़्यादा डिफरेंस देखने मिल रहा है. एंड इफ़ यू कैन सी कि जो प्लांट टिश्यू है दे आर स्टेशनरी. हाउ आर दे? लेट्स डिस्कस ऑन दिस. सी प्लांट टिश्यू कैसे हैं? स्टेशनरी है. इट मीन्स दे आर नॉट मूविंग. Okay, and since they have to be upright, they have a large quantity of supportive tissue. Now since they are not moving, they are stationary and they are fixed, they have to be upright. So that is the reason that they have large quantity of supportive tissue which are present. And supportive tissue जो plant cell के पास है, supporting tissues, they generally has dead cell. What kind of cell the supporting tissues have? They have dead cells. Okay, and if you see the animal tissues on the other hand, they are moving here and there. Why are they moving? Why can you see the movement in the animal tissue? Because they are searching the food, mates, as well as shelter. So they need some kind of mates. They need their mates, they need food, they need shelter, and that is the reason they keep on moving from here to there. But plant tissues, they don't need food, they are making their own food through the process of photosynthesis. So they don't need shelter as well. That is why you can see that the plants are stationary, or even we can call them as they are fixed, because they are not moving, right? And if they are not moving, what do they have? They have a supportive tissue which is present within them, and this supportive tissue is nothing but it is generally having the dead cells within them. Okay, now because the animal tissues, they are moving here and there in search of food, mates, and shelters, what happens is they consume more energy as compared to plants, because plants तो यहाँ से वहाँ move नहीं कर रहा है, right? But animal will have to move from one place to another in search of food, shelter and all, right? So animal tissue जो है, that spends more amount of energy as compared to plants. ज़्यादा energy कौन spend करता है? Animal tissues जो है, they spend more amount of energy as compared to the plant tissue. And most of the tissues this animals contain, कि एनिमल टिश्यूज़ में जो, एज आई टोल्ड यू दैट प्लांट्स के पास कौन सा टिश्यू होता है? दे हैव सपोर्टिंग टिश्यू, एंड सपोर्टिंग टिश्यू में डेड सेल्स होते हैं, राइट? बट एनिमल टिश्यूज़ में ऐसा नहीं है. सिंस दे आर कंज्यूमिंग एनर्जी for moving from one place to another in search of food, shelters and mates, the most of the tissues which are present within this animal tissue, they are going to be living. क्या होंगे वो? They are going to be living. Okay, so another difference that we can see between the animal and plant is in the pattern of growth. Can you see the growth pattern of the plant tissue and the animal tissue? That is also one of the difference that we can see, right? So the growth in plant is limited to certain region, while this is not so in animals. अगर आप plants का growth देखोगे तो एक region तक limited है, right? But animal cell में it is not so. So there are some tissues in plant that divide throughout their life, and these tissues are localized in certain region. So अभी plants के पास कुछ ऐसे tissue होते हैं which is going to divide throughout their life. Okay, and ये tissues which are present in them, they are localized in certain region as well. मतलब वो एक region लेके बैठ जाते हैं, वो tissues जो लाइफ टाइम डिवाइड करेंगे थ्रू आउट देयर लाइफ, दे आर गोइंग टू डिवाइड, so they take a certain specific location in a certain region in the tissue. Okay, so based on the dividing capacity of the tissue, various plant tissue can be defined as growing or meristematic tissue and the permanent tissue. What are the two different types of plant tissue? Meristematic tissue, and secondly we have, secondly, what do we have? We have this permanent tissue. So in short, we have already discussed on this, right? So cell growth in animal is more uniform. Can you see the uniformity of the cell growth pattern which is seen in the animal tissue? So the cell growth in animal cells is uniform. So there is no such demarcation of dividing and non-dividing region in animals. अब प्लांट्स में एक डिवाइडिंग रीजन होता है, एक नॉन डिवाइडिंग रीजन होता है, बट इन एनिमल्स के केस में दिस इज नॉट सो. Okay, there is no dividing and non-dividing regions. So the structural organization of organ and organ system, when you see the what kind of structural organization and like organ and organ system के बीच में what kind of structural organization is existing, that is far more specialized and localized in complex animals. जैसे जैसे आप animals पे study करोगे, the kind of complex animal, you will see कि वो उनके पास specialized organs होते हैं, they have a localized organ system which is performing their functions. Okay, so this fundamental differences that we see are like this are reflecting the different modes of life which are pursued by these two major groups of animal. So whatever fundamental differences that we can see with respect to plants and animals, okay, that deflects their the mode of life that they are pursuing, because these are two major group of organisms that we have, and the feeding method these animals have, that is also different, right? So also they are differently adapted for a sedentary existence on one hand. तो plants जो है they are adapted to sedentary existence and active locomotion on the other. Animals are actively locomoting, means they are moving from one place to another, whereas plants always show a sedentary existence, right? So they are contributing to this difference in the organ system as well. Okay, so it is with respect to this complex animal and plant bodies, we are now going to talk about the concept of tissue in some detail. अब हम क्या करेंगे? Now we are going to discuss about the concept of the tissue in detail. So in the next class we are going to start with the plant tissue, where we are going to discuss on the two different types of plant tissue, that is the meristematic tissue, okay, and the permanent tissue in detail. Now permanent में we are going to discuss simple permanent tissue and complex permanent tissue. Okay, तो simple and complex permanent tissue discuss करेंगे. So this is what in short we are going to discuss on the plant tissue. After that we have this animal tissues to discuss in detail. So we have this epithelial tissue, and we have already discussed what are the different types of epithelial tissue that we have. Okay, epithelial के बाद we are going to discuss on the connective tissue, then we will be discussing about the muscular tissue, and lastly we are going to discuss on the nervous tissue, because we already know that we have four different types of animal tissue that exist, right? So only we are going to discuss on meristematic tissue, permanent tissue, and the four different types of animal tissue that we have, that is epithelial tissue, connective tissue, nervous tissue, and muscular tissue. So these are the two important types of plant tissue and animal tissue that we are going to discuss in this lesson, that is lesson number 6, tissues. Okay, so I hope whatever I have like introduced you all with the topic has been clear to you all, because now you can see कि epithelial type के जो मैंने आपको 4 different types बताए थे, they are not been given to you all, but at least you should have that knowledge कि ठीक है ये 4 types के हैं, it is not given, so what, I know that. Okay, after that we will be discussing on different questions which are given, like define the term tissue, how many types of elements that together make up the xylem tissue, we are going to name them. Then how are the simple tissue, they are different from the complex tissue in plants. Then, with respect to the cell wall, we are going to differentiate between the parenchyma, collenchyma, and the sclerenchyma. I hope you remember this. We have already discussed on this, right? Then we will be discussing the functions of the stomata की exactly plants के अंदर stomata का function क्या होता है, and then we will be like diagrammatically showing the difference between the three types of muscle fibers that exist. Okay, after that we will be discussing on the specific function of the cardiac muscle which is present. Then we will be discussing on like differentiating between the striated, unstriated, and cardiac muscle on the basis of the structure or the site or location which is present in the body. Then we are going to draw a well labeled diagram of the neuron and name the certain things. After that, we need to identify the types of tissue which are present in the skin, bark of the tree, bone, lining of the kidney tubule and vascular bundle. And 12th one is we are going to name the region in which the parenchyma tissue is present. Then we are going to discuss on the role of epidermis which is present in plant. Then how does the cork it act as a protective tissue, and then we are going to complete this chart. Okay, so this lesson is it is an easiest one. You can score well if you understand this lesson completely. Okay, so I hope whatever we have discussed today is been clear to you. Now in the next part we are going to continue with the rest of the part for this lesson tissue. Okay, thank you everyone.